Hello, everyone. Please ignore the here, this is better. Please ignore the awful background behind me. I have no lights. My room is being rearranged. I am working on another short film. So, if you will just please ignore the hideousness of the background of the video, we will continue on with important subject matter. Anyway, today we are going to talk about the box office again, and people were getting mad at me a month ago because I had done more than one video about the awful box office in Hollywood, and some people were saying that I was making it up, that Hollywood really isn't doing really isn't doing badly right now, that movies are fine, theatrical is fine, and that I was just making it up. But we just had the worst May ever at the box office. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes came out. I saw it. I thought it was eh, like I didn't hate it and I didn't love it enough either way to do a video on it. The movie If came out. I really didn't feel very compelled to see it. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes did okay. It's not breaking any records or anything. It's probably going to come in the $500 million mark, and considering that it's going to be one of the biggest movies of the year, that is really bad. If didn't do well at the box office, came under projections. The Fall Guy came out and bombed at the box office. I saw it and I thought it was okay, but it bombed at the box office. And then this weekend we have Furiosa and Garfield, and combined they have created the worst Memorial Day weekend at the box office in 40 years. So this is comparing it without inflation. It's the worst thing at the box office in 40 years, and I'm sure if we compared it to inflation, it would be even worse than that. There's just not anybody going to see these movies. It's really sad to watch. After April, there was barely anything out. There was barely anything I wanted to see. May, just there's been nothing really exciting to come out, and that's what I want to get at with the conversation here, is because you see all these people coming up with different reasons for why things aren't doing well at the box office. They come out with that ticket prices are too much, that the theater experience isn't good, that theaters are dirty, or that things come out too soon on streaming, and that we're in a recession. And all of this is very important, and I do agree that each of those things are elements that have contributed to this bad box office. But I'm also just want to say that in addition to that, have you noticed there aren't any movies that people are really excited about, that no one wants to see? Like, this is what I don't really understand. Like, I saw The Fall Guy and I thought it was okay, but it wasn't really surprising to me that it didn't do very well at the box office. Like, people are saying that it's shocking that Ryan Gosling didn't really pull people in after Barbie, but I'm like, but even before Barbie, he had not starred in a movie that's successful at the box office. Like, I love Ryan Gosling. I think he's great in everything that he's been in, but I know that he's not a guy who really pulls it in at the box office. And The Fall Guy was just an okay movie, but we've already seen it established that movies Hollywood makes about Hollywood that are love letters to Hollywood just don't work out. We've seen that before, and they started the marketing for this film way too early. So I could have told you going into The Fall Guy it wasn't going to be big at the box office, but they projected the opening for it way too high, and it came in under that. And then Hollywood started lighting its hair on fire of, oh, it's over for theatrical, and they've been doing that all month. Like, if they said that it was going to come in like 40 million domestically, and it's like, that doesn't seem to be a movie that there's that much interest in. And then it came lower than that, and then they start going crazy again. And now with Furiosa and Garfield, the same thing is happening. There's like this shock that, oh, these movies did not do well. You know, I'm gonna go see the Garfield movie, but it's like I'll go see it, but I could have told you, like, Garfield, it's not like a huge IP. Like, there's a nostalgia for it, but it's not a huge IP. It looks like it's going to be just a generic family movie. It was pretty obvious that it wasn't going to do well, especially as, you know, with inflation and the rising ticket prices and whatnot. Garfield, it just wasn't going to bring in a bunch of people. And Furiosa, a part of the Mad Max franchise, like Mad Max Fury Road, for example, is a movie that was very positively received and has fans, but it wasn't a huge smash at the box office. This isn't a $1 billion franchise or anything. I think I remember it made like 300 million or so when Mad Max Fury Road came out, and this is an R-rated film on top of that. And it's like, it was very obvious that no one cared enough about Furiosa it to make it a huge hit at the box office. But that's the pattern with these films. It's like these were obviously films that there wasn't a lot of hype in, but now Hollywood is lighting its hair on fire and being like, this is the end of all things, Samwise Gamgee. And I'm just thinking, it's so obvious that these aren't that these aren't movies that people really really wanted to go see, and that's what I said at the beginning of this year, because last year was like the big flop buster. That was sort of when all of the business practices and the things and the marketing practices that Hollywood had built itself on fell apart, because um we saw the Flash bomb, and that was the culmination of all the years of DC drama when no one wanted to go see DC movies anymore, and that's why all those movies bombed. Indiana Jones, way over budget. That is a franchise that was a bit too older skewing, not a lot of interest from younger crowds. Also, kind of followed the Lucasfilm pattern of taking something that was filled with a lot of hope, making it more dour. Like all of these films from last year were the things that were projected to do really well without really reading the room of the audience and how they were feeling, and they just flopped. And they at least had Mario and Barbenheimer, though. But this year, I looked at it from the top of the year in January and said, wow, there's like barely anything to see this year. And we all said, like, Dune Part 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Joker 2 are the only movies that seemed like they could be really big hits at the box office. And that's less movies than ever. And it's looking that way again. And so it's like this should not be surprising to anyone. Instead of over projecting how well these movies are going to do, they should just say, yeah, this was expected. We didn't really, they didn't really bring anything out this year. There's barely anything to watch that really incentivizes people to leave their homes and go to the theater. So of course the box office is struggling this much, but I just see that Hollywood is responsible for its own demise here, because even with something like The Fall Guy, where it's an okay movie, I wouldn't not recommend anyone watch it. I think that it's decent, but as soon as that movie did not do well on its opening weekend, I think it was either 10 to 15 days later that they put it on streaming. And so they complain that people seem more incentivized to only watch things on streaming, but then they incentivize them to do that because basically after COVID, they've created this model where if you are not interested in seeing a movie in the theater, or if you're not that interested, then you can choose. You can literally tell them you would rather see it on streaming by not going, and they will do it in 10 to 15 days. Instead of incentivizing people saying that you won't get to see this movie again for maybe 6 months because it's not going to be there then. So they're just sort of destroying their own model, and they keep doing that, and they keep making these short-sighted decisions of, oh, we need to make our money back now, so they'll put it on digital immediately, and that just devalues the theater experience over and over again. But then there's still evidence that the theater experience can still be alive. Like Anyone But You, for example, was a rom-com that was, following the generic Shakespearean story of Much Ado About Nothing. People said it was pretty generic, but people liked that because there have not been any sort of rom-coms that really appeal to the regular person lately. And I could have told you as soon as I saw it, yeah, I haven't seen a rom-com like this marketed this way in a very, very long time. This is what a lot of people like to see. It's a rom-com in a different way than Fall Guy. Like, it's one for the mainstream. It's marketed with two very attractive people. Like, that's what you sell, and that's what made it work. And Anyone But You did not have a huge opening, and it shouldn't, because it was just another rom-com, but it made a lot of money over time because it became a date movie, and that movie was actually very, very profitable. So that's an example of how you do it at the box office. They didn't have a high budget. They gave themselves a chance and made their money over time, and it was a movie that people wanted to see and that they incentivized people to see. But I just see Hollywood as so out of touch with all of this and understanding what people want and their habits of how they consume media. But right now it looks like Marvel movies are going to have to save the box office again, at least with Deadpool and Wolverine. But it's like for the past 10 years, all they did was build up these franchises like Star Wars. It used to be Star Trek, Marvel, DC, even like 80s franchises like Terminator and stuff. And they completely relied on those things to to make their money, and, you know, Disney movies and whatnot. And then we saw in the past decade, or not even the past decade, the past like 5 or 7 years, just the systematic destruction of all of that, where people became disillusioned by Star Wars, starting with The Last Jedi. People became disillusioned by Marvel in the past couple of years. People became disillusioned by DC as an ongoing thing that lasted for almost 10 years. So they disillusioned people from all these franchises, but that's all that they put their investment in. And now it's like they're confused and shocked that after they have all of these, you know, B-tier movies that we're never going to make that much money in the first place, that's all that's really out, that people aren't going to see it. Like, this is the result of you had it so that Marvel and Star Wars and the big tent poles like that were the only thing that were going to bring people in. You didn't build up anything else, and now those are gone. So this was very obvious where it was going to end up for theaters. So it's kind of frustrating. Like, it's like the average person can point these things out and express how they feel about not being incentivized to go to theaters or watch movies, or that there's just nothing for them or nothing that they feel really excited about. Like, no one would look at Spider-Man No Way Home or Endgame and say, let's wait for that on streaming, or any of these big movies. But they don't have many movies like that, and the ones that they have that they want, they don't even give a chance. Like The Fall Guy, they give it like a 10 to 15 day window, and then it's on streaming. So they're actually just sort of eating themselves alive with this model, and it's really frustrating to see, because it's like even the average person could point out like why these are such bad business practices, and how, yes, it is more expensive to go to the theater, and there's a lot going against the business right now, but there's so much that they could be doing to incentivize people, or to even just make smaller movies like Anyone But You make a profit at the box office. And it's just really frustrating to watch this industry collapse like this and die, and it's getting more and more nerve-wracking to wonder where it's going to go in the future. It almost reminds me of what happened with the comic book industry, where in large part what happened is it was run by people who just could not adapt to the changing times, could not understand how to sell their products to people anymore, and just were clueless as to how to go forward, when even their own readers could tell them things that they could do going forward. But it's an unfortunate thing. And we're just going to have to ride it out and see what the future of distribution for movies is, and if theatrical can survive this. Theatrical has survived in the past, the changing times, but the reason why it survived is that there were people behind the scenes who were innovative and willing to create new experiences that made the theater experience worthwhile and incentivize people to go. But I'm not really seeing that anymore. I'm just seeing them actively fight against the theater experience. But yeah, well, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you, patrons, as always. Hopefully there'll be some more positive news later in the year as things change. I hope they change, but things keep getting worse. So, and they're not making many changes in the future. So, I hope that I can do positive videos in the future, though, if things do change. But thank you, patrons, as always, for supporting this channel. Thank you for watching. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and I will see you guys next time.